What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, I want to talk about LSU and the funk that they got themselves in. I want to get a little bit into the power rankings that we see as the AP Top 25, where we have teams that have played as many as 8 games and teams that have played as many as 2 that are all ranked inside the top 25. And I want to talk a little bit about recruiting. I was not expecting to be able to do this live stream podcast today, though I was going to do a podcast for the RJ Young Show podcast where you can download the show if you missed it, because I have a thing that is, coming up a little bit later on, a little sooner than I thought it would be, but we're going to get it in while we can. And I got some stuff that I am very excited to share with you on the channel here coming in the next couple of hours. So let's start with the bad news. The bad news is LSU's season just continues to get worse, man. On top of Coy Moore and his allegation that he was basically unlawfully searched for a gun he did not have as a star LSU wide receiver in Baton Rouge, you have this sexual assault allegation scandal that had popped up in August and has popped up once again. USA Today doing intrepid reporting to find out how LSU basically sat on allegations of sexual assault that were alleged at football players. As a matter of fact, I went to the story on USA Today and read it all. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to read you just a little bit of a summary that was put together on ESPN about it, because I think they do a good job of putting together the details as we need to hear them. So, the report on USA Today, right, alleges that LSU officials had knowledge of sexual assault allegations made by former running back Darius Geis and former football players, and either ignored those, right, complaints or denied the victim's request for protection. The report cites 3 cases in which football players were found responsible for sexual assault and were allowed to stay on campus, receiving deferred suspensions, which amounts to probation. And then this is just ghastly for me. The report details assault allegations made against former wide receiver Drake Davis by an LSU tennis player, including the allegations that the victim's tennis coach, Mike Sell, was informed that Davis had punched the woman in the stomach but did not report the assault to the school or the Title IX coordinator. The report states that LSU sat on the information for months while Davis continued to assault and strangle her. That is ghastly. That is criminal conduct alleged. And LSU had a duty to investigate these allegations, and it seems that they did not in these 3 very specific cases. LSU on the football field has also been just woefully awful. I was saying they're going to catch 5 losses to begin the season. Then you had more opt-outs. They lost 34 players off of last year's team, and they lost the reigning Biletnikoff Award winner in Jamar Chase to opt out. They lost Kerry Vincent, who I thought was going to be an outstanding nickel safety for them, to opt out. They're very, very young in the secondary, and they're very, very thin in the secondary. They also have lost Miles Brennan to what seems to be a real injury as opposed to coronavirus contact tracing or quarantining, and had to play TJ Finley, a true freshman quarterback, who I think is going to be pretty good here in a couple of years. But even on top of that, you have the self-reported violations, NCAA variety, that involve a booster paying money to a former offensive lineman's father after embezzling from a hospital. And you have Odell Beckham Jr. getting slapped with a 2-year ban because he decided to rip off a grip and give that money to Justin Jefferson and others who he considered to not be affiliated with the LSU University anymore or with LSU football anymore, and thought he could just pay them their bounty. No, sir. They are still very much part of the university, and that's still very much a violation. So you get the loss against Mississippi State, and even worse is we know that Mississippi State is bad, right, when we thought that they were good. You beat Vanderbilt, but Bixby's a 3-touchdown favorite against Vanderbilt. You lose to Missouri in a game where you had an opportunity to win it on the 1-yard line and couldn't punch it in. You get the game against Florida postponed, so you're going to have to play them anyway on December 12th. You beat South Carolina, and you are one of the reasons why Will Muschamp got fired yesterday. And then you lose to Auburn. in a game where you had you you gave up 48 to Bo Nix and Auburn and scored just 11. You had the game against Alabama postponed, but I don't see how that one's going to get made up. And you are a 3-point underdog to Arkansas. That is unthinkable to start the season. But when you know how their season has gone, LSU being 2-3, would they have losses that they could still sustain to Florida, to Arkansas, because they're favored, Vegas likes them in that game, and to Texas A&M, you're looking at, goodness me, 2-6 before you get to, Mississippi. And we think that Ole Miss might actually be good enough to beat them because of what Ole Miss was able to do against Alabama. Say nothing what Arkansas did to Ole Miss, which is probably why Arkansas has a chance to beat this LSU team. So if you're just counting the ranked opponents they got left, that's 2 losses. Believe that Arkansas can go in there and get a W on the road. Yikes. And then you get Mississippi in Tiger Stadium. So, it's bad scene down there in Baton Rouge right now. Now, the positive there is that you're still recruiting really well. And I want to get into that because to talk about how the LSU has been recruiting, also to talk about how Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson have been recruiting. So I ran some numbers, right, through the 247 Sports calculator, which I really love to play with. And if they get to add the guys that they are very high on in Maason Smith, Tristan Leigh, and Korey Foreman, you get to 25 total commits and a score of 311.25. That is not too shabby, all things considered, especially knowing what has happened with LSU football over the last 3 months. They've gone from a precipitous high to one in which it would not be out of the question for them to fall out of the top 10 in the recruiting rankings. But even now, they sit at number 3. Problem is, Alabama's got 22 commits in the boat, and they got 310 points. Ohio State's got 20 commits in the boat, and they got 304 points. So even if you get all 3 of these guys who are really great players, you're only going to be a point ahead of Alabama before they add another. And I think there's some leans in there that we're talking about, right? Tumise Adelier is actually down between them and ampersand you, or so it seems, after decommitting from Ohio State. And at a time when the dead period has been extended through what will be a calendar year, right, of April, for teams to be recruiting the way that they have at the top, it just goes to show you just how much some of these programs have invested in their recruiting staff, invested in technology, and invested in trying to connect with the players individually. Just going down the top 10 of the 247 2021 recruiting class, you'll see Alabama at 1, Ohio State at 2, LSU at 3. Oregon has been charging at 4. They got 23 commits. Clemson at number 5 with 17. They'll close really strong, right? Because that's what they do, and they'll have an opportunity to finish in that top 3. Georgia's at 6 with 18 commits, right? And Florida's at 7 with 26. Every time I don't think that Florida can take more, they end up taking more. To say nothing of getting DeMarcus Bowman coming out of the transfer portal and end up there. USC's at number 8 after finishing outside the top 60 in the 2020 recruiting ranks. Michigan at number 9, but we'll see how that holds together with Jim Harbaugh very much on the hot seat after losing to Wisconsin 49-11 in the Big House. The worst margin of loss for Michigan at the Big House since 1935. And then Tennessee at number 10 with 26 commits. Notre Dame's at 11 with 19, and Oklahoma's charging from 12 with 15. I expect them to finish pretty strong there as well. The more I look at what LSU has to overcome, the more I am astounded they've got this far. Because one of the questions that I put to LSU fans over the course of the last 6 months has been, was the 2019 national championship worth it? They will tell me yes. And I hope so, because it feels like it's going to be the last national championship you win for at least 3-4 years. You're down these 8 scholarships, but I hear more LSU fans trying to make it a positive in that, cool, we lost a lot of kids to the transfer portal and to opting out anyway. We got the room. That's not the way you want to do it, man. You want to have ballers at every single position, because in having ballers at every single position, you have better players at your starting positions, and you have an opportunity to do what you did in 2019 all over again. But it feels like it's going to be another 7 years between we are actually talking about LSU being a national championship caliber football team, and Ed Orgeron might not actually be the head coach at the time.